Welcome to the June 5th bhyve production user call. We have Hans, Andrew, Mark, John, Cretonian, Ayas, Alexander, Harry, Hazam, Jan, and myself, Michael. So far, I am now blasting through announcements at the start of calls because they usually get sprinkled in, and I'll try to keep them quick. BSDCan is right around the corner. I'll see you there, Alexander. I hope others can make it. Last-minute registration and attendance is just fine, but naturally it's a scary time in the world to travel much. But hey, it's looking like a great event with a great lineup of talks and a great lineup of attendees. So I'm very excited. The 2025 OpenZFS User and Developer Summit was officially announced, I believe, Monday. And I will ignore this logo part, but we should have a logo published shortly. And that is in Portland, Oregon. Jan, thanks for participating remotely. Thank you for joining in person, Andrew. And it's an awesome, small, intimate event. And I welcome you to consider attending it. The registration should be open pretty soon, but the dates are out there. One tiny thing, I realized I'm volunteering far more than I am working, such that if you want to support these calls, I invite you to come to bsdfund.org. And there are other activities like Hans's amazing work, but we are working in parallel on a proposal to the FreeBSD Foundation for his amazing CPU work, untangling the differences between Illumos, bhyve, CPU handling and live migration, and FreeBSD. Hans, do you have anything to share on that, or you just have a list of things to do?
Well, I've just scratched the surface, really.
Yes, you have.
Look at prerequisites for the CPU ID work, and I'm finding more and more changes from Illumos that this apparently depends on. And while it's probably possible to get around it and just take the CPU ID work and somehow squeeze that into bhyve, I think it would be worth to check what Illumos has done and go through the list of commits and upstream them one by one.
Yep, that makes sense. And
very interesting. Some exciting new features, new functionality, but also a lot of cleanups for a variety of reasons.
Well, Godspeed on that. Thank you for doing that. Let's see. Let's hop in. Let's kind of take these in sequence. Sorry, some of these don't yet have explanations, but they are breaking news, like as of this morning. So thank you, Hazam, for joining us. In last week's conversation, which was awesome, I just wanted to share two links following up. One was BMD that got mentioned. That was a bhyve supervisor out of Japan, and there is I think you recorded the meeting that was, I don't know, Jan and Antonig and the developer at some god-awful hour because Japan and Asia time zones. And also Chris's VM State D. And he took a fresh stab at it based on the conversations on the calls and had a wonderful summary, which is like, that's more complicated than I expected, which is totally cool. And again, I crafted a bhyve requirements for anyone who happens to jump into the space because it is indeed a challenging topic to address. But Hazam, you have the floor for Sylve updates.
Okay, that's cool. Hope you guys are all doing well. So last week, our goal for this week was to get a VM up and running with VNC in the browser. So I think it'll be better if I share my screen.
Please
Can
do.
I do that?
Yep. And it should let you
okay.
do that without my permission.
Is that visible?
Oh, it's in another tab for those who haven't noticed that Zoom changed the way they do that. Yes, I see it. Better. Yeah, make it as full screen as you can. We've still got the Zoom information in back.
Okay, is this better?
Oh, yeah, just go wider. Yes, getting there. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to show you guys a running VM, and then we'll go towards setting one up.
Okay.
So again, I installed Windows on this.
And can you go wider? I still
ACPUs.
see my name at the end there on the right. So just widen that window.
Is this better?
Yes, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So we have Windows running. I'm not really happy about it, but it's fine. And we
Pays the
have a
bill.
nice little console here, and then you know this works. And I have GPU pass through working fine. So you can see I have passed through a 1060 here, and that's kind of cool. And VNC is superb, like it's really fast. Um, and yeah, so any questions? I think I go better off when there are questions involved.
Are you using an external VNC client or have you found a web-based one?
This is completely web-based.
Oh
Like we
my.
don't have anything else running other than bhyve. Like bhyve
Okay.
is
Is
the
it
only thing, along with Sylve.
is it based on guacamole?
No, it isn't. It isn't. I really
Oh,
wanted to
okay.
keep everything contained to the Sylve's binary. So Sylve runs a reverse proxy, a TCP to WebSocket reverse proxy
Okay.
that will let us interface directly with bhyve. So that's why you get like really nice latency and stuff like that. You can actually watch movies through this. It's that good.
Is it using WebSockify over the no VNC protocol? Or
Yes, it is no VNC underneath, but it's directly connecting to like
the
the bhyve's
WebSockify socket?
exposed.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the thing, and yeah. Any other questions? Maybe.
Yeah. I see you have data center followed by the BSD machine underneath. Does that mean that one
Mhm.
instance of this is intended to be able to connect to multiple machines?
Yes, that is the idea. Exactly. Yeah. So I was thinking
Fantastic.
like yeah.
Inspired
So
by
like you
Proxmox,
could.
as I recall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was thinking I'll use something like SSH or something in between, or even a custom protocol maybe to sync between machines. And once live migration is a reality, you can just click a VM here and then migrate to another place, or a lot of cool stuff.
Because I was thinking about that after the meeting last week. That hey, wait a minute,
Hmm.
one instance of this, it would be really nice if I could talk to multiple
Hmm.
hosts.
Yeah, that's very much possible. And I would love to do that, but I'm kind of like stuck on the fact that live migration is still not there. So I don't know how it should work exactly. But I think I would set up like configuration sync and things like that, like syncing what kind of network situation you have on one instance of Sylve and how should it be on the other one, things like that.
Jan has a
So yeah,
question.
yeah, please.
So
Hello.
one
Yeah.
of the ideas I have is, do you have any kind of message bus slash message broker as a middleware for the clustering, or do you want to reinvent that wheel yourself?
To be honest, I didn't think of it that far because I was kind of thinking like, okay, we don't have this thing yet, so we'll just think about it when we are about to cross that bridge.
Because
So yeah.
one of the ways I could see this be implemented is, let's say you use something either MQTT or some other kind of message broker, and then
Mm-hmm.
everyone is a client to that. The web interface sends the requests through the message broker, and then the daemons on the individual systems report state changes and consume the work requests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
The other idea is, do you have any logic in your code to handle CPU pinning so that you do not end up with noisy neighbor syndrome where you accidentally overcommit your host CPU cores by letting
Mm-hmm.
the host kernel dynamically schedule the vCPU threads,
Mm-hmm. No, the
which is
thing is,
illegal.
since sorry, yeah, go ahead, yeah.
So with bhyve, you can
Mm-hmm.
pin them to specific
Mm-hmm.
logical host CPUs,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no built-in support in bhyve for kind of managing which bhyve guest gets which CPU cores.
Mm-hmm.
So you would need some kind of distribution logic. Let's say this machine gets these 4 cores, and then the next one gets these 8, and then another one gets another 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then you potentially want to kind of unload them on the host so that you change the default CPU set, which
Mm-hmm.
a kernel and user space use. With, I think, one default kernel thread CPU set, user space CPU set, and then additional ones you can create on FreeBSD. And you would need some kind of control logic so that you can not just say, I want a set of CPU for 5, 6, 7, but instead you could say, I want a set out of 4 reserved CPU cores, because that really helps with the liveliness of the guests if you know that you will not get stuck in the scheduler queue, because you've dedicated a certain number of logical host CPUs to the guest threads.
Okay, so the thing is, I read a lot about CPU pinning on both through libvirt and without it, and the only thing that I've implemented now is the fact that, like, if there is like, instead of CPU pinning, I kind of did memory locking. That is the only thing I did right now, because for PCI pass-through, that is kind of important. So I feel like the configuration aspect of it through Sylve would be pretty much same for the user. Like, they don't have to think about it. The whole point of this project is the fact that you don't have to think about any of these things. So what I would do is, like, as you suggested, we'll just have, like, okay, which cores do you want to pin to this machine? And then we kind of handle it from here, like here on out. So
Yeah,
I think
the
yeah.
problem. Right now you have to do the math yourself, and it's error prone and annoying, especially if you have a bigger system. You end up clicking lots of boxes or entering numbers, which just mapping and finding non-overlapping intervals in a set is kind of what computers are designed to do instead of humans.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why I would really value this feature. It's not that you can't do it yourself, and it's already valuable as a first step to just expose the CPU pinning so that you can manually do it.
Yep.
But if you get this kind of
I wonder
get
if
away
libvirt
from
has
CPU pinning and get to
remember.
reserving CPU cores, so that I only have to check, I want to reserve this many cores, and you do the math, then
Right,
that would be
we can,
very
we
much
do it for the
appreciated.
user. Yeah, makes sense.
And
I remember seeing pin here. Yeah, it is there.
that seems very straightforward insofar as it's just a feature to put on the wish list. I can't imagine what would preclude that in some way.
Just passing this through the so that you can actually use multiple -Ps basically. Is probably a very easy feature to implement. And
as far as this is
do
concerned,
it manually. But for a slick front end, it would be really nice if you don't have to do the assignment manually. You can just say, I want a 4 or whatever or 8 core virtual machine.
I could just add another
the
box
CPU
here.
cores
That's
to be
not
dedicated.
an issue. Yeah, makes sense. I could do that.
Cool. Any other questions, ideas? Applause.
Only runs on FreeBSD, I assume.
Sorry?
Does the application only run on FreeBSD?
At the moment, yeah.
But we have already had discussions about making it work on both.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah. Any other questions?
What's next?
Yes. Well, you mentioned that, yes, you're totally correct that FreeBSD's bhyve does not have a ready-to-use live migration feature. What would be possible to implement and already quite helpful to minimize downtime as an offline migration, especially if you can minimize downtime as in take a snapshot, replicate it over, take a new snapshot,
I've seen that.
Replicate
in
that over,
VM
and then
bhyve
in
they
the
do that,
third
right?
pass, stop the guest, snapshot it again, and do the migration, so that you minimize the sync time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I thought about that actually. That's actually pretty cool. But I kind of didn't get all the parts down for that. Like my mental, what do you say, like outlook on this was the fact that, okay, let me finish one host first, and then once that's kind of perfect, because I still had trouble with stuff like shutdown and destroying and things like that, because sometimes it would give me weird error codes, like I don't know why, but it's kind of slowly getting there, I think.
As in ACPI shutdown?
Yeah. Shutdowns were really like the thing is right now it's kind
What
of
version of
very
Windows?
hacky.
What version
Sorry,
of Windows?
this is Windows 10. Yeah, Windows 10.
Okay,
Yeah,
I've documented what the problem is, and let me find that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
What's
Yeah.
the issue exactly?
Because
Is it that it started inside of the
yeah.
VM, it doesn't always start back up?
No, I think one possible issue is that by default, for whatever reason, Windows 10 does not have correct ACPI push button support. So you have to manually tell it to, reboot or restart depending on the command you send it. And I was ripping my hair out until I realized that's the problem. Windows Server gets that right by default, but Windows Desktop does not. So I'll
So
look.
you have to set the right registry keys or what?
No, it's in the control panel. I'll dig it up while you're doing this. Go ahead.
The reason I
Okay.
asked about it for Windows 2022 is because on bhyve and OmniOS, whenever we currently reboot from inside the VM, sometimes it does not come back up. Bhyve registers as off.
Oh,
So that's
that's
why
an interesting one. That could be
that's
a
why
different
I was
matter, yeah.
curious.
Any and all observations are valuable. Continue. So this is
Yeah.
exciting. I'm curious what's next.
Next, I think CPU pinning would be like really cool. That's a good feature suggestion, so I could do that because I completely forgot that this existed.
No worries.
So we can do this. That is cool. And I think the next part would be implementing more stuff here, so you can kind of see what is passed through and removing that. Like the only thing that is there right now is like you can see that these two graphics card stuff is passed through, and you can kind of remove it here, which would be cool.
Are you doing USB pass-through and you can actually like sit at a console, or is that purely for compute or AI or something?
USB power, if it is supported by that PPT thing, I think we can do that because bhyve has like there is this pass-through thing here, right? Like this thing. This is what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's smart or dumb or anything. I just read the man page, saw this.
Oh,
this is
fine.
cool,
Then the basics.
and I
So
just
that's
passed through the
cool.
entire device.
And that's the start of it.
Yeah.
And that's where Alex
Yeah.
can help and
Mhm.
shed some light
And
on
then if you have a bus, like a USB bus that is connected over PCI, you can just pass that through immediately. Like that should be fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
You can pass through a dedicated second PCI Express USB card.
Mm-hmm.
Those are among the easiest devices to pass through, especially if you don't care about using them during early guest boot, because they don't need a video BIOS or other special cases. They're about as easy to pass through as a network card or a storage card you're not booting from. But there is no USB pass-through in software where you emulate a USB host adapter in bhyve and
Right, yeah.
pass through individual USB addresses. Unlike in VirtualBox where this is possible. So there's
In
no
VirtualBox,
dedicated USB
I
pass-through,
forgot. Like,
as far as
do
I
you
know,
need to
there's
install
only
something on the host? I mean, the guest side, like for that, or what is an easy way?
you have to use the PPT driver to prevent the host USB card drivers from attaching to that, because otherwise the device isn't available for passing through. So it's the same as if you wanted to pass through a GPU or a network card or whatever. And then you can pass through the whole USB controller. You kind of have to watch
USB
out
controller, I
that
get it.
if you have USB 3, you also have to pass through the related USB 2 and so on. So basically all of the USB functions, the PCI functions making up the full USB ports. But if you do that, it works. I've done it in the past. And yes, that means you can use it as a local workstation because you have a pass-through working GPU, you have USB, which means you can attach the rest. So you don't need a dedicated audio driver, you just use a USB stick with a audio transmitter on it, or whatever standard you want. So just a cheap little USB audio stick works. But yeah, it's not polished. Just the tools are there.
No, I was just wondering, like you mentioned USB pass-through PCI, right? So if I just, this is not PCI, this is USB, right? So if I pass through, what can I pass through here? I can pass through this, right? Host controller. Then all my
You
USBs could go to the VM, right?
Sort by class, and then by subclass. Sorry. And it should
this
cluster them. It's a bit weird that you don't have the other non-XCI, but hey, maybe it's just one device on Intel. On other systems, it's oftentimes multiple PCI devices.
Okay.
But if you do that, you would lose all your USB access. So the keyboard would stop working on the host.
No, I think that should be fine because I'm using this as a headless host. So let me just pass that through. Yeah, and we'll create a new Alpine VM just to mess around with.
Shut down your Windows guest and give it the USB device if you want.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just try that out. Let's make an Alpine VM. Yeah, so this controller, right? It's gonna pass that through. Alpine doesn't need much. Let's use, you know what? Let's just give it 2 gigabytes. Yeah, looks good. Okay, so now we have Alpine running. Okay, that's cool. Let's just see if it, at least detected inside it.
That's actually a great diagnostic strategy, is to do, say, a Windows VM, out of a Linux VM, and just,
Yeah.
same
And
hardware.
this is like really
OS.
fun. I hate using Windows for diagnostics because last 2 days has been hell.
I hear you.
Okay, let's just see if we get an IP. Yeah, we got an IP now. LSPCI, I don't think it's there. Let's just add PCI tools. Will they have their repo set up? Probably not. Let's just do this really quick. So theoretically, we should now see the USB stuff here, right? Does that make sense?
Yes,
because I kind of passed that whole thing through.
I would expect you to see it in /dev, probably.
Yeah, we'll be there. 1 second. Let's just do that then.
LS USB?
I don't think Alpine ships. Oh, it ships with that. That's cool. Yeah.
And it has an XHCI controller there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, maybe plug something in it.
Okay, I got to go to the other room.
Just put it in a USB stick.
Yeah, 1 second. Okay, I plugged in a USB. Oh wow, that's really cool.
Oh, that's great.
Kind of anticlimactic.
Hey, it worked. That makes me happy.
Exactly. I agree with that. Chess is not anticlimactic.
A demo that works?
Yeah, that's nice.
And one that we didn't plan.
That's even more rare.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's nice to see that the libvirt PCI pass-through logic for bhyve works.
Yeah.
I actually have applications for that.
Dynamically use devctl, I presume, to detach the current driver dynamically, not just if you have already statically or by hand overrode the default driver to make it available.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. Like when you click pass through on something, I override whatever is there, like PCI.
devctl.
Yeah. devctl
you're doing
stuff
that, not
like
libvirt.
No, I'm doing that.
This is incredibly useful for those situations where you need to have the licensing dongle.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
my personal use case was the fact that I really like
naughty way
playing
to
games
deal
on
with
Windows.
that would be to implement some kind of multiplexing logic, right? Yeah. Multiple guests can see the same dongle.
Oh goodness.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, funny you should mention multiplexing logic because I have a little section down below that might need some kind of multiplexing logic, which is
Okay.
legitimate.
Not going to imply otherwise. It's just I just kind of had to think. Wait a second. So if you implement USB software pass-through for a hypervisor, what is to stop you from allowing multiple guests from accessing the same dongle? Because is there some kind of session tracking logic within the dongle protocol, or did they overlook that and kind of just treat it as a UUID
I mean,
on a stick?
that would be a strictly dongle thing.
Yep.
I mean, I
It's
imagine
between the dongle
99,
and it's.
I imagine 99% of the time there's not going to be, but it's a severe weakness in your
Yeah, it would be
licensing
kind of.
dongle if it doesn't.
Yeah, especially when it allows true offline work with the dongle. It's kind of setting yourself up for some kind of man-in-the-middle attack
Well,
on the USB.
Imagine using YubiKey with it. That would not be good news.
Yeah, depends on in which mode you use the YubiKey.
Other
If you
questions?
use it as a
ideas?
password on keypads, then no. If you use it for send me the decryption key and I will perform a public key operation, you have to give it the decryption key to use the stored credentials. So
Back to bhyve. What is
yes.
next, Hezam?
Next, I think for next week we can have CPU pinning. That's really cool. And I would flush out the interface here to have more stuff like see which PCI devices are passed through, more storage options, things like that.
Very, very cool. There is the Dev Summit next week. And I don't know if you had any obligations under your agreement with the foundation, but of course, if you can check boxes off, that'll make everyone happy. But so far, booting a VM was a huge milestone because a bunch of us were scratching our heads like, we can't boot a VM, but you've got so much other great stuff working. So if I've got an installation, do I just rebuild it and it should sprout all
It should work. Yeah, I pushed everything today evening, like
Great.
just before the call. So
we appreciate that.
I hope it works. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hazam, have
Yeah,
you
yeah.
looked into hierarchical resource limits to do QoS, so quality of service, or bandwidth limits on disk I/O and stuff like that? So that
Disk
you could
I/O, I
see
kind of
this,
read into it, but
bhyve
I didn't find
process
much
gets.
documentation. But one thing that I did look into a lot was from last week's call, Michael's suggestion for multiple stuff like what is the thing called? The pre-startup processes, post-startup processes, things like that, right? And starting a
Those
VM
are
through wait
important
on LAN.
so that you.
Yeah. That is actually, I have a very nice idea to do that, which is kind of building a scripting engine so that I don't have to think about all possible permutation and combination that the user might use.
Oh, yes,
I can
please.
just give that
Make
to
it
you guys,
hookable.
and then yeah, exactly. I can just add a scripts tag here, and then you can do like a bash script that will return exit code 200 if it's all good, exit code 201 if you want to reboot the machine, exit code 202 if you want to do this, that, whatever you want. You guys have fun with it, because I kind of realized I can't cater to all scenarios. So I kind of run the script every 2 seconds maybe, and then if it returns 200, I make sure the VM is shut off. If it returns 201, I turn it back on. And if it is this, like, you get to choose basically. So that is one thing I thought about, and this should be fairly easy to do because Go is kind of really fast. I can run a tick every second, and yeah, that is nice. Yeah, so that is one thing that I kind of have stuck in my head since last week.
Great,
So,
because handcuffing the user is not progress. And I mean, supposedly you can remove, be it Zentril or Proxmox, and have a configured Debian system, but I'll believe it when I see it. And are you using the official config syntax at all, or is it purely your own syntax?
for
For a bhyve VM, is it using bhyve?
bhyve VM? Oh yeah.
Okay.
Right now, what I'm doing is it's kind of funny.
Okay.
I'll show you guys the config. Like this is the VM config for this VM, like the
Okay.
Windows one. I use libvirt,
Oh,
but
libvirt,
it
right,
does
yes,
convert at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay.
But then libvirt doesn't have a bunch of stuff still, so I kind of have to do this. This is really ugly, but you know, it is bhyve syntax at the end of the day.
It's your local
So,
libvirt bhyve syntax, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
So I can just
So-
pass these through, and then it just works.
Extensible.
May I recommend that you use the set a single option syntax with the config syntax instead of the Cursor old config. You can invoke bhyve on the command line with snippets in the config syntax. So if you use bhyve, I think -o, you can set a variable binding as if you had one line in the config file, and then it becomes a lot more readable. Because decoding the syntax, especially for someone who's not been using bhyve for several years, is just hard
No,
to read.
the end goal actually I would say would be to ditch all of these. I have been talking with the guy at the foundation who was working on libvirt, and he actually did a lot of good work in the last few weeks, I would say, because if you see here, like the UEFI stuff was just weird here. This is not how it is supposed to be. Like he mentioned, like there is new NVRAM stuff that he implemented with 11.4 or something like that, but we are still on 11.1 on 14 and 13 and all these releases. So once that is done, I think this whole section is fixed. And then one by one, kind of like all these options should ideally be integrated into libvirt. So this is kind of like a stopgap until that becomes a reality, I would say. Because the major reason of using libvirt in one sense of the word is the fact that I can port this to Illumos or Linux or wherever, you know, people are running stuff. So if I make it like bhyve stuff, and bhyve config stuff is really cool. I read a lot about that. But then we would be kind of like telling other OS people like, okay, you know what, we don't really care about you guys. bhyve is, you know, all nice. So does that make sense, or like?
Not really to me, because just changing the way you encode the option on the command line argument doesn't break anything.
No, like, okay, maybe if I show you how it works right now, like when we're creating a VM, for instance, what I'm doing right now is I'm building an XML from within Go. Like I have a struct defined here, like you can see like all the kind of stuff that libvirt kind of needs.
Your usual Go standard library serialization.
Yeah. So this struct is kind of universal. Like everybody needs memory, everybody needs CPU. Like I'm talking about like any operating system like that has libvirt bindings. Like all of these are the same. Like the only thing that would change would be this. So you like the amount of code that you write is like 0 basically. And for networking, it's even more nice because I can just specify the interface stuff here, MAC address stuff here. And this is actually universal because I could use my Linux VM stuff as is over here because it manages the bridges itself. So that's also kind of cool. So yeah.
Cool. Other questions?
Hello?
I'm curious, as a storage guy, how far will you go down the rabbit hole of storage configuration? And I will forever beat up on Proxmox for not having ZFS disk replacement in the GUI because, oh, it's an appliance. You can't do the most critical function on your system, but what do I know? So I saw you had like PF as a dependency and other things. I'm just curious, like if ADA 0 was mirrored with ADA 2, would the GUI let you replace that?
Replace it? Yeah, it should. Let's do a thing. I'm running some VMs here. Let me just check. We could delete this. That's not an issue. Okay, let's just make a new pool over tank because that's easier, I think. Okay, let's just make a new pool. No, before that, we need to kind of partition ADA so that we have 2 disks to play with.
GPT built in. Oh, you go. There we go. Of course, you want some templates maybe, but that's awesome.
Yeah, let's make it 3 disks.
Look at that.
That's cool, right? Yeah, we'll make it 3 disks now. Oh, 4 disks. So we have something else to replace with. Okay. Let's save partitions. Okay, we have 4 partitions now. That's cool. Now we go back to pools. We make a new pool. Okay. Call it tank again. Let's make it 1 vdev.
Oh,
And
look at
then
that.
RAID Z. Okay.
Yep.
All good. We'll post create it because I think the sizes don't align. Okay. Advanced. What do we want? We need spares. We don't need spares for now. We'll just replace on the fly. Okay. Let's create it. Okay. Now we have a RAID Z1 pool, right? All good. Yep. All online. Now let's just write some data into it so that we have something to play with. I don't have a FIO command on hand. Let's just type something.
Touch.
Truncate. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Make a
Perfect.
file.
Yep. Yep. Ah.
We have some usage here. I think so. Yeah, it's just gonna take a while before it shows up here, I guess. No, I don't think it uses anything. It's just metadata changing, right?
Right. It could
But
just
yeah,
be.
we'll just replace this device.
Oh, really? Okay.
Replace, and we should be good to go. Yeah.
Old new.
Just showing up.
You've just beaten Proxmox. Good work, and
It
you're
just
not out of
it's
beta.
going fast because we don't have any data
There's
on
nothing there. No worries. Just the fact that you.
The fact that it works,
Yeah.
Okay.
and that we can, and that you can do everything from within the web interface.
Yep.
Yeah,
Are you
and
using the ZFS JSON output for that?
unfortunately, no, because I don't have that on hand on the release that I use.
landed, but yeah. Wow, dude.
But yeah, once that comes to life, I will definitely migrate to that. Now I built my own kind of library like for that.
Goodness. Okay.
So all the functions that I need are here. So
But you're running the ZFS command and parsing the standard out?
oh yeah, 100%. These are like really difficult to parse as well because replace. I remember spending a lot of time on it.
On FreeBSD 14.2, you should be able to use the JSON output, right?
14.2, I don't think so.
Good.
How do we
ZFS status?
I didn't install the package for ZFS for what it's
No,
worth.
it's on 2.3, right?
Oh, came on. There you go.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I don't remember. Like I when I was talking about this with the foundation people, like that was the initial plan to do that. But since we don't have that yet on release, I was kind of stuck. Yeah. But this thing works. It's very stable. Like I've been playing. I have some people using this at the moment because they hate Proxmox so much. But this is like nice. It just works.
Nice. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well now, Godspeed. Keep at it. That is fantastic. I am very
Yeah, right. It's only in current. The JSON output, that is.
Yeah. But once that is like something that a lot of people use, I would migrate this, or I'll just add to this library because I really like having to deal with JSON, and this is not fun. This is a lot of stuff, like unnecessary.
Messy.
That's a bunch of time right there. Cool.
Yeah, particularly getting bat output and parsing it sucks.
Oh yeah, especially for the replay stuff. Oh my god.
One feature request which would make lots of people coming from bigger deployments happy would be to have cloud init host support, so that you can generate a tiny little ISO disk image with a guest configuration and then kind of create it with makefs in FreeBSD. Because FreeBSD has the required tools to create file system images and then just make it available as a read-only device. And in FreeBSD 14, New Age Init can pick that up so that you can run commands on fast boot and stuff.
Okay.
To trigger fully automatic installations, configure stuff, install packages, this kind of stuff. If you have a bloated enough image with a complete cloud in it, you get to use all of it. But FreeBSD 14.2 has the most important stuff implemented in a few hundred lines of Lua. included as a little script in user.libexec and an rc.d script. And that's present, the right kind of file system with one of the two magic names or something. And type, I think it's MS-DOS-FS and CD9660 is supported, I think. And then you can kind of auto-provision your guests, which would make it possible that you give it the configuration payload, like a list of packages to install, and you reboot the guest and stuff happens.
Yeah, that's actually cool, yeah.
And the configuration is a bit of basically a JSON file on an otherwise empty file system.
Right. Makes sense.
So not much harder than what you've already done. Probably easier than parsing the ZFS command output. Yeah.
Did I see a status button there? Could you hover up and show us that for, say, the pool? Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay. Oh, okay, cool. There you go. You've summarized it. I hope that any warnings are parsed and.
Oh yeah, it will.
Awesome.
Let's just do. What was the command to turn off a device? ZFS.
Offline.
Dpull offline.
Offline. What device do I specify? Can I specify a partition? 0p4. No. What do I do?
We use
Oh,
status
pool.
first
Okay.
to see what the name of it is.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, now it's degraded, so you can see.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, a kind of a question: have you thought about taking what you're doing? We're talking about ZFS directly here a lot, but what about using like CTL and being able to attach to a enterprise class, possibly an iSCSI server or something, so that you can have backups and failover?
Those are good ideas, but the thing is, like, this project kind of started with a singular goal of being able to use bhyve.
Okay.
And I kind of built all of this because I wanted to see it happen. Because the thing is, like, if you ask Prosmos people to this, they'll be like, nah, why do this? Like, we don't have fun doing that. So all of this thing that you see, like the plumbing around it, was just built out of my own necessity for this kind of stuff. Necessity. So, like, if you guys have any ideas like that, like mounting iSCSI over somewhere else, backing up somewhere else, like, just put it in the chat or just send me a message on Discord. Like, I can definitely take a look at it.
You are moving
one
at
of
high
the
velocity, good work.
Really fancy things you could do is if you access your disks via virtualization SCSI in your guests, which common operating systems support other than Windows. For Windows, you have to install the driver. Then you can use the FreeBSD common target layer to decide which of the LANs you made available to the common target layer subsystem. And you can just basically reassign volumes or SCSI logical units, to be more precise, to different common target layer ports, which are like virtual host bus adapters, so basically virtual SCSI controllers. And you can remap at runtime how the disks are mapped, or if they're only accessible to the host. So any disk which is made available via the CTL framework is already easy to access, but so via iSCSI, you just add new ones locally, so you can make your CVODs available. Yes, you can even hot plug.
That's what's exciting.
What's missing is that hot plugging doesn't generate a hot plug notification event, so the guest doesn't know that the disk is where you cannot. Right now, you have to rescan the bus manually. So in FreeBSD, run something like chem control rescan all. They would know more about. Someone has a lot of background noises.
I think it's Daniel. I muted him. And Rob Wing or someone was working on that for notifications. I've pinged him but have not heard back. Anyway, great work. You are kicking butt. Well, and
Nice
key
work.
thing, you have a milestone where you've defined some pretty critical behavior, like booting a VM, but then to have disk replacement, which the competition doesn't have, is fantastic. Any other questions? We should move on before this becomes a multi-hour meeting.
One quick question. Do you already have any kind of alerting in there? For example, if the pool degrades or if the guest crashes with a triple fault?
I would need to again build the plumbing around it. So like I would think emails, stuff like that.
It would be fine if it is expected by the user to pick a script to run, and maybe you provide an email example script or a push over notification script or whatever.
Yeah, your notification of choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Annoyance delivery vehicle of your choice.
Even if we've got a methodology for that, then we can probably come up with some example scripts for different things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Something like
the
push
scripting
over
engine
10
thing,
lines of shell.
I would say that the scripting engine thing was something that I'll look at more critically in the coming days, because that is kind of useful everywhere. I could use this in the VM stuff. I could use this as you mentioned, the notification things and things like that. So I would definitely look at that. But along with that, I would say like I kind of had hopes to implement all kinds of notifications, so that the thing is, like, if you see here, like there is like an audit log of things, right? So this audit log also appends things like, okay, when something fails, I already do that in the database. So I could just have a trigger, an SQL trigger that just runs, so that I get to do things. Okay, maybe send emails, maybe send NTFI notifications or Facebook messages, whatever the user likes. I'll integrate a few.
Which database are you using?
SQLite, yeah. Everything always SQLite first.
Do you separate the logging from the configuration? Because I realize logging could get huge versus the kind of
yes, I do. I do
jewels.
it with files, yeah. So if you go into the data folder, like you can see data, there is a logs.json here. So it has JSON logs, just in case. And then this audit log stuff is just so that you can see what is happening within the system. And I would kind of what do you say, like extend this to include notifications. So if imagine a disk fails, and then it would log it here first, and then it would be like, okay, do we have a place to send the notification to the user? Okay, let's do that. So that is kind of what I had in mind for notifications. But yeah, I don't think that's a really difficult thing to do, but yeah, really cool. Yeah.
And if you implement the script or hook engine to run scripts, you probably should document in the user documentation the state machine, so that you know which state transitions exist and trigger what behavior. So that I know what's the precondition which I can expect when my script runs. Like, for example, guest is running. Probably, okay, this logically implies that the bhyve guest has been created and so on. But something like restart, what does that mean? What is already available? Is the network already set up and just the bhyve process not yet started, or is not even the guest IP known because it will be dynamically allocated?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be very detailed in the beginning, because of course you're in the early stages of development, things are going to change quickly. But just a little bullet point list of things, like these environment variables are passed, or this command line argument set. You can basically, let's say,
right, that'll be more documentation work, because I just realized that it makes sense. Yeah, it'll be a lot of documentation work.
Yeah. For now, the documentation could take the form of an example script which just logs everything to syslog. So basically just a kind of nicely format it and write it to logger
Right.
kind of script as an example,
Mm-hmm.
telling you what you have here, and yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. The scripting engine thing, I'll definitely look at it. Yeah.
What's the best place for wish list items like that and ideas? Like Google.
I would say GitHub issues.
GitHub issues, great. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
because then it's easy to. I kind of like I'm sad that I encourage a lot of people to use Discord at first, because it's really hard to Google and find out things when you use Discord.
Yeah, it's a black hole for information.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say just from now on,
okay.
let's just keep things to GitHub, and
Great,
that's
fine.
good.
Great. Please, I'll put it in the document, your input in, because we could give you like 40 issues an hour. So issues. Okay. Anything else? Keep focusing on the core functionality, and there will be an infinite number of suggestions and ideas. And a lesson from early FreeNAS: don't take every idea as a mandate. Use it logically. You're architecting this, so please architect it rather than just bolt on everything that comes across as an idea. And you'll find that you'll burn out if you try to just please everyone. So I love what you're doing. Great work. And dear everyone, this is why the plumbing under the hood is critical, and interfaces like JSON in ZFS and bhyve and you name it, just to make all these thousands of flowers bloom on top of it. Anyway, thank you. I hope you can stick around. Maybe we should get to a few other topics and we can circle back as we please. Welcome, Farhan. I'm reading the chat. You're working on USB driver development. Very cool. Okay, I will share. Let's just run through a few more topics and go ahead and discuss in parallel and on GitHub issues, because wow, you have opened a spectacular, beautiful can of excitement and Pandora's hypervisor. I don't know, use whatever term you want. Great, love it. Okay, enough of my babbling and commentary. Let's move on to Mark. You said you've had issues on Illumos with Windows VMs just not rebooting. One thing I'll throw in there is if it's a Windows desktop, and Hazam, this is what I was trying to remember, is that you want to make sure on a Windows desktop that you have the power settings correct, that it behaves correctly in response to an ACPI push button, which happens to be what bhyve is doing with Signal. So here in the doc is that text.
Could you share the docs link?
It was deep in the hackathon docs. It took me quite a while to find it. So it was actually a terrible place for the information, but I knew it was somewhere. So here it is, and I've got some screenshots somewhere, but it's literally just going to options and what they think they use, what the power button does. So just look in your Windows control panel.
Okay.
Don't ask me how I know that.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, totally. Mark, so you've seen, it looks like you've got a topic in the Illumos
box.
Come on.
Yeah, in the Omnilus forum in the Illumos category of topic box. But
let's take a peek.
Yeah, basically, it's Windows 2022 is what we run most of our servers on, data center or standard desktop. But remember, what happens is whenever we boot them, bhyve sees that they turn off, but it doesn't register it with a reboot and not just a turn off. And so it just keeps the zone off. So there's not a hang, the zone logs, and the zone.log or the other log file, I think, the init.log. They don't show anything out of the ordinary.
That doesn't look right.
So this is an older issue that I've had for about 2.5 years now.
There you are.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the link. Copy.
That's in the wrong one.
You've got a broader list, which includes the one, a broader context. There we go. Omnia still has to make the pass. For what it's worth, do you see this behavior with pass-through going on?
No, this is usually
independent of it. Okay, so the link seems wrong, but okay. Points taken. And file whatever ticket in Illumos land is appropriate, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay to move on?
Yep.
Cool. Keep us posted on what you find there. And then kind of related, and I guess we can get to that right now. Andrew on Mark's team, you discovered some surprise behavior with Windows CPU topology, and I think it was going with 2 sockets and 16 cores each, and you blew out VNC networking control. What can you tell us about that? John, I'm muting you. You're kind of hissy as per tradition. Andrew, if you're around, I've got that question. And Harry, you've got a topic which I can find. You've got your hand
Can you
up.
guys not hear me?
We
No,
can now
okay.
hear you. Let's punch through that
Okay,
super quickly
sorry.
and then get to
It
Harry.
turns out it's actually even weirder than that.
Oh,
If we
good. I
Oh
mean,
yes.
so good. Okay.
If we specify it like 32, here I'm putting it in here,
Sure.
sockets to cores 16, problem. If we specify 32 sockets to cores, and I typed that wrong, threads 1, it works.
Oh, okay.
Could it
And
be so?
the documentation says otherwise.
Ah,
So I have no idea what's going on here.
Probably some kind of ACPI table corruption.
Yeah, but I don't know why that would break the I don't know.
I presume because of the way interrupts are discovered.
Chat. I don't like multitasking.
I'm going to mute people as they do weird things in the background. So keep at it. I wonder if it's like you said, maybe the ACPI table gets blown
Yeah,
out. Maybe you have a
I mean,
documentation question, but probably should check for that behavior.
it very well could be, but if that's the case, we need to either somehow force it to have the proper ACPI tables.
Hmm.
Like from the documentation, it looks like these should not be different code paths. It looks like it should just be shoving threads 1 in there and then doing the same thing. That would be, that's how I read it.
Could the problem be something like that? The default value for threads is 0 and Windows doesn't like that?
Documentation says it's 1.
Is there a good way on Illumos to dump the ACPI tables as they exist in the guest?
I'm not
To
aware of one.
compare them?
I'm not
Because
aware of
now
one.
that you have
The best option to me would probably be to just fire up a Linux VM, go in the guest, dump the ACPI tables in the guest.
Because now that you have a configuration on Windows you can use to set it up, you could just enable the native Windows remote desktop protocol server. And then you can let it boot even in the broken state and use Windows to debug Windows via RDP because you no longer need to use CNC.
Well, yes,
Has its
but
place,
right up
but
until
you do want it working.
yeah, right up until I actually do need it to have the
No, no.
console.
Of course, but to debug the differences.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not as a not
like I said, my
ignore
more
the problem, but
my more straightforward thing, at least from my perspective, would be to use a Linux VM probably because it gives me better debug ability.
Well, have you simply tested one with that configuration? Does VNC blow out, or it's fine
On what? I'm sorry.
on a Linux VM rather than Windows? Because maybe
I have not. No.
Maybe it has nothing to do with Windows. Could be just be an internal hang up.
I don't know. I have not yet.
Well, there's some ideas. Keep us
interesting to
posted.
also test this on FreeBSD.
Mhm.
Does it happen when you reduce the sockets to 1 or the core count in total? Because you have like 4
there are a
dimensions
billion.
here.
The problem is there are a billion different permutations here, and I
Not
have not
really.
tried them all.
There are only a handful meaningful changes. The number of sockets, 1 or 2. The number of threads, undefined, 1, 2. The core count, yeah, basically try powers of 2 at most. So you have a few combinations, as in a handful or a dozen, not more. You have to test.
I've tried a number of them. I have not tried all of them.
Just put them in a keep notes in a little tabular format, and then yeah.
Yep. And I'm glad you're trying it manually insofar as if, say, the tool that we just got a demo of was to just set something that just happens to work out of dumb luck, you may never find what could be a bug. So thank you, and just keep us posted, okay?
Yep.
Harry, you've got your hand up. I know you're doing some nifty, was it ARM-based libc development possibly in bhyve?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to lower my hand earlier. I was actually just wondering if this this Windows issue, sorry, was related to the one that we saw maybe a month ago. Do you remember that? And it was like a write-up about something with the Windows emulation, just like kind of shit in the bed.
Well, I have the ability to scroll down. Let's take a look. Right off the bat, it's not ringing a bell, but that's a lot going through my head. Sylve, yes.
I might have been on the ZFS quad. I can't quite.
Okay. Well, Windows fits where it goes.
Mhm. But anyway,
Anyways,
that wasn't my main topic. My
I
main
know,
two
but it's
topics
all
were
good. It's all related.
yeah.
While you,
Oh
it's
no, this is it. This is it here. The where you
oh,
are
the
right now.
performance where
Yeah.
certain, oh, that was I think mitigations just completely slamming Windows guests, and that raised
Mm.
questions of host versus custom CPU ID layouts and profiles, et cetera, et cetera. Good. Aye. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, hard to say if it's related, but it's all valid. So tell us about your ARM-based hosting and
So
your documents.
I wanted to ask like a general question on people's experience using bhyve with ARM in general. Um, as I'm very much looking to do semi-hosting, so sort of like take like a bare metal machine and like debug mode or something, and you kind of like it's sort of like running a VM, but you have these special syscalls, these semi-host operations that interact natively with the host machine, and it goes through like mm, it can go through something like Camel or I'm hoping bhyve. And I was just wondering if anybody had any experience with ARM in general on bhyve, because everything that I've been looking up currently is like 2 or 3 years old, and it's all quite
Right.
seems like difficult. But I'm literally at this moment in the process of doing an ARM install.
Okay. I've put everything I know on the bhyve wiki page, and it
Hmm.
includes a ThunderX system. And last week, I handed like 8 ARM systems to a retired person here in Oregon, Fred, who is trying to get them booted, configured, you name it, to explain exactly where we stand, because I didn't have time to get, say, an Ampere system going and a honeycomb and a orange pie and a bunch of things. So I hope to have news there. Keep prodding me. I've just pinged him on chat to see if he's got any news. But yes, it's a hot topic. And for example, there was a limit of 16 vCPUs, which will hopefully be resolved, and there was no PCI pass-through. So it's definitely a bit like bhyve 5 to 10 years ago in several regards. But anywho, yes.
I don't see her in here now, but would this be a area of interest for Ava?
Oh, very much so. It's her Ampere system. Yes. Yes, it
I'm
would.
just saying
And
this
her
is maybe
honeycomb.
a person. This is maybe a person to get in contact with.
She's been providing hardware to me, and I've now provided it to someone else for a second set of eyes and hands because mine are pretty tied up. So it's all in motion, and it was better for me to have it on someone else's desk than collecting dust in my lab. So stay tuned.
I might be able to add some information. I'm literally about to compile an ARM kernel for Raspberry Pi 02W, but it's one of the boards that's unfortunately not supported
Interesting.
officially. So
Well,
I thought I'm gonna give that a go. But then I guess my second question was around in a similar vein to the bhyve and ARM. So like support, I guess, is I have come to the point where I want to emulate the board I'm targeting, which is not the 02W, it's the Pico 2W. And unfortunately, neither Camo or like no emulation software supports this board. So yeah, it's a it came out last like sometime halfway through 2024. So I guess it's just not been adopted into these pieces of software. So I've figured out how to add a device to Camu, and that's just basically clone the repo and then use their like internal library to their internal C library to essentially write out like the memory mapping, the register addresses, the GPIO pins, all of these things that you need to do to essentially like boot into the machine and use the machine. And then just define that, and then you can kind of like play with it. And I was wondering if this is something that would be portable, or I could do something in a similar vein with bhyve, and then
what was the model?
Just bring in it. So it's
reference?
called let me bring a link up. It's RP2350 is the specific board I'm using. So it's a Raspberry Pi Pico 2W. This is the data sheet. It's just like a small microcontroller.
Yeah, just highlight it and Pico. Oh, I see Pico, not Pico. Okay, yeah, just highlight it and give a link. So are you saying can in the future bhyve behave more like given boards? And I will say I've been
or I mean in the current moment in time, is it possible for bhyve to be extended? It doesn't need like a external facing API. I'm very much happy to clone the repo and go into the internals, but I don't know if I couldn't really find out if this has been done, or if like or the process really around adding new or custom devices.
Wait a second. This is for a microcontroller for a Raspberry Pi RP2530.
Yeah.
2350, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually quite an interesting board. It's dual architecture, so it's it's ARM and RISC-V.
Related. Sorry, I was just.
Well, no, I mean the idea is that I want to be doing this is the same board that I want to use. So I've implemented semi-hosting so that I can essentially use my computer to do things on it. And I find that Cemu is not.
Are you using?
Yeah.
So the question is, are you using OpenOCD as your semi-hosting platform?
Yeah, I'm using OpenOCD server as well as like
it's a bit
remote
slow,
GDB, and then going through Cemu as well. Cemu also allows you to do the semi-hosting like pass-through sort of, but I find that because Cemu doesn't support the board, I actually have to add the device And if I was to do it through Chemi or through something like bhyve, I would be able to have like serial output, and
Given
I
how
would be able
cheap
to
Let
those
him finish.
ports
Please let
are.
him finish.
I would be able to like map these GPIO pins of the board to the hardware on my native device through the semi-hosting API that has been implemented. So I would the board doesn't have like HDMI, or it's very hard to connect it to like an external screen or anything. It takes a lot of time to get there. But if I was able to have like Chemo or bhyve set up with good semi-hosting support, that and the device obviously supported by
So the
these
big
programs.
problem here is that all the kind of driver development stuff or peripheral development stuff you would have to do requires
Mm.
you to now, if you want to do it in a virtualized environment, you first have to write the emulation before you can actually write a driver, and then you have written a driver for your untested emulation.
Essentially, yeah. So
So
I would need to do both parts. Yeah, I need to do
and there will
the
be so
kernel
much more
level
work than
driver,
just
and
writing a good driver in the language of your choice
yeah,
uh,
I'd be
or
happy to do
ecosystem.
that as well because I'm having fun
And
writing the hardware
I
code
guess
for it. So
my question would be, given that these boards are less than $10 a piece,
yeah, they're quite cheap.
and don't use much power, but you need a second one as your debug probe. You
You
can
can
put
use
it on perf board.
you don't need the second one for it. You can use like a UART standard
For
debug probe,
the
but it's just
debugging
a bit
stuff, you
different.
kind of want to have a debug probe for serial
Yeah, I've
wire
got the
debug.
debug probe, but I mean, you don't need a second board to run the debug probe software. You can do the debug probe software on the host machine and go through like I've got a little
If you have
device
fast
for it, but
GPIO pins, you can bit bang it.
mm,
So if you have something like a Raspberry Pi, a real one, not the microcontroller, you could use the GPIO ports to bit bang the serial wire debug
mm,
protocol. It's a bit messy because it shifts half duplex data direction so often, so you cannot easily use SPI peripherals because it requires bit precise direction changes, which most SPI and other kind of peripherals which help you with shifting normally do it in multiples of the word size, which is normally 1 8-bit byte these days.
mm,
So you often cannot do something like a 3-bit transfer in one direction, a 1-bit transfer in the reverse direction without going to full software-driven bit banging,
mm.
which OpenOCI supports a bunch of debug probes from the firmware for the Pico probe to something like an FTDI 233H, which is a generic USB to serial chip, which
Yeah,
can be
I've
used
got
for
a USB
USB
to serial
high-speed
debug one.
bit banging. But yeah, I wouldn't want to develop low-level software without the serial debug probe, as in a real one, which
Mm.
can do breakpoints and
Well,
single
that's actually
step.
how semi-hosting works. Is it actually it is essentially like forcing a breakpoint and then getting the host to execute the
No.
syscall behind the semi-hosting call. It uses the
If you
breakpoint
look at the
arm
spec,
instruction.
it uses the system call instruction of the breakpoint
Well, if
instruction.
you're on thumb, if you use the thumb instruction set, so I'm this Pico 2 it uses thumb 2 instructions, so
Yes,
it
exactly.
actually
If
uses
you're
the
on a
breakpoint.
Cortex M0 non-zero, non, so an M0 Plus has a system call instruction. The
Mm.
M0 without a
And then
plus
there's
has
two
set
different
optionally.
system calls numbers they
Yeah,
do, and then the breakpoint call is the different one. But I've implemented this, and I just want to use it because it means obviously
yeah.
debugging is very much easier with the debug probe. But say
And
I want
access to a
to,
file system and
yeah. But say I want to do something beyond debugging, such as like I don't know, creating just a general interface that you can maybe just play around with the host machines. File system use the Pico as sort of like a recovery disk that is system agnostic, maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying random words, but this
Save it
would
for the
require
embedded
you
call.
to,
Yes. You two
yeah.
maybe get in touch directly. This is fascinating. And of course, we'd love to have semi-hosting support.
So I've
but
written this hack,
great
but it's
great.
STM32 specific. I will drop the link in the chat. You can look at the code. It's not the
Please do.
nicest
Yeah,
code.
as well another time.
But after I've used this, I didn't want to go back to OpenOCD because OpenOCD is about as slow as a 100 kilobit UART.
Yeah, it's not very nice to work with.
Because of all the lots of context switches, TCL scripting, and so on. It's just, and the stuff then goes through a Unix socket here or a pipe there. It's just lots of context switches and inefficient code. It's very flexible because of that. I will give them that, but yeah.
Jan, what's your link to swd.com?
That's totally off topic for bhyve. That's
Okay.
a little tool I wrote while tinkering with ST microcontrollers. It gives you a very fast serial console, effectively by using a pair of ring buffers in the microcontroller memory. And then you have a single 32-bit variable which contains 4 bytes, where each byte is a read or write index into one of the 2 ring buffers. So I have 1 read and write index per ring buffer.
Okay.
Because I have 2 ring buffers, all of the state fits in one 32-bit variable, and the host will just pull that variable and then use a byte write to atomically update its read or write position, and it gives you a serial console which is about as fast as your debug probe can do, which means a
this is
megabit
very
for a
cool.
cheap
I'm reading it
ST-Link.
now.
So with a cheap ST-Link clone, I can easily push a megabit per second of text between the host and the microcontroller.
Cool. Okay.
Which, yeah, is a factor 10 or more than what a normal UART does. Of course, you can run UARTs at higher clock rates in most modern microcontrollers. So, but you can also get faster debug probes. So if you get an ST-Link version 3, which does USB high speed instead of full speed, it becomes even faster.
Okay.
Good
so work.
I think
you two work it out. That's awesome.
8 or 9 megabit.
Sweet.
Was at that point limited by the operating system overhead on the host. Just
okay. That's awesome.
Can we get on top?
All we can do is all we can do is encourage you. Keep it going, and we look forward to your updates. Okay, John, you mentioned the MSI X vector work. It looks like they improved it. It's sponsored by Intel. The review and commit are linked there. Anything to report, or have you tested it?
No, I have not. I just noted that it was there and saw it go by the other day.
Great. Keep us posted. Thank you. Okay, one little bit of breaking news from the last few hours. Thank you, Rob Norris. I'm not convinced we deserve you, but he kindly took Jan's highly interactive feedback, both through, I don't know, explaining the problem, documenting the problem, blogging about the problem. Rob has a great blog post. And Rob kindly, a few hours ago, 11 hours ago, implemented, it looks like, cloning support in channel programs, which is something that would assist Jan's acrobatics with ZFS for jails and whatever else you do with ZFS. Jan, any observations or questions on that?
It would also be useful for very fast bhyve instantiation if you want to use an image-based approach where you would have a template as a ZFS volume, and you could just use a channel program to clone it on demand.
Sweet.
So it would be relevant for something like Sylve.
Sylve?
So yeah, whatever.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
we'll figure out a pronunciation in time. But great. Hopefully he will address the was it snapshot creation, which I believe was also missing, but
Snapshot creation already exists. That has always
there was
existed.
one yesterday that was also missing. What was it?
Creating empty file systems.
Oh, just okay. Yeah, right. A file system create. Yeah, that would hopefully be even simpler. What do I know? Cool.
But even if it isn't that easy, what you could do is you can keep a snapshot of an empty data set and clone that.
Cool. Oh, duh. Love it. Great. Okay.
As a
Lots of options.
workaround, you would then have a dependency on that tiny little few kilobytes of metadata overhead empty file system, but who cares? About the disk overhead, the annoying thing is that you have a dependency then.
Well, yep.
Yeah, but that's not worth talking about.
But people are
If it
thinking
comes
and
to
delivering. I love it.
replicating stuff and then you have clashes in the namespace and so on, it can be annoying to work around.
Cool.
Not because it's overhead, just because now the script complexity is higher. And you see annoying artifacts in the file system.
Yes, we get it.
We get it.
Polluting
Yep.
the
We
ZFS
get
list
it.
output.
Okay. Other breaking news. I just saw like a commit, I don't know, also a few hours ago on a FreeBSD Kerberos import because there have been this sort of ebbing and flowing of, gee, do we have Intel DRM drivers in the base or not? And what are the advantages of each? So here's I'm guessing a Kerberos package being brought in if this thing will load. John, did you have a comment? Someone had a comment on there. I heard it run. Oh, page unresponsive. Okay. So anyway, heads up, it's a little off topic, but it keeps coming up. So there's that.
Yeah.
Andrew, you had a question? Yes, Jan?
This commit brings in MIT Kerberos as the default Kerberos implementation in base. Or at least this
replacing or supplanting what?
Replacing the old Heimdall version we have.
Thank you. That's the question. Great.
Historically, FreeBSD used Heimdall because of cryptography export laws, and MIT Kerberos is written in the USA, so you couldn't export strong cryptography. Yes, the split is that old. And then you had Heimdall from some less backward country when it came to crypto regulation in the late 90s.
Please do fix my spelling of Heimdall. Totally off topic, but it was breaking news. Moving on, Andrew, shared GPU support, CUDA, ROCm. What you got?
ROCm's AMD's equivalent to CUDA.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
Just are we thinking about it? Does it exist? Is it a thing?
You kind of have to ask AMD if they're serious about ROCm.
No, the question is not specifically about ROCm. The question is, are we doing or talking about shared GPU support across VMs?
Oh, sorry. Sharing the same GPU via virtual functions between.
Yes.
Okay.
And
my mistake.
Because that's useful, and it's specifically useful for compute workloads like this.
It's also very useful for desktop virtualization. If you have Windows guests and you want the accelerated desktop.
That's fine, but I care about that a lot less than I do compute.
Understandable.
So are you talking about when you say shared GPU, are you referring to a VF mechanism where I can take a GPU and create a virtual function device, or are you truly talking about somehow divvying up and having a director to keep things straight?
Not sure, honestly.
Well, the NVIDIA server/workstation GPUs and some of the AMD GPUs do support virtual functions. I think Intel GPUs do too, at least in theory. So it exists in hardware.
So my limited understanding is that the ROCm was supposed to be AMD's answer to some of what CUDA is doing, and
That's mine as well.
it was
It
supposed to be
is.
open source, and there was not going to be a license on the virtual function implementation.
A license?
Licensing issues and
There
Yeah,
are
you need this
cache,
card
old
which
hard
supports
cache.
this.
on the NVIDIA stuff. Been there, done that. Don't use it.
Yeah, and NVIDIA wants to nickel and dime you to death.
More than nickels and dimes.
Yeah, larger
Yep.
denominations. Okay.
Yes.
Is this pretty much what we're doing with SRIOV and virtual NIC functions? Just happens to be GPU resources?
It's a bit more complicated
I
because you
don't
have
doubt
to
that.
configure a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
So the other way to do it, at least for some stuff, is to have a power virtualized GPU, which is then mapped via Vulkan Compute or something like that to the host GPU, so that you have maybe OpenGL and these days Vulkan support in the guest, and it's mapped to the host driver.
Well, virtualize well and prosper. This is an Alexi question. He's not present. Let's just keep that open. And Andrew, no one's against it, of course. So watch this space.
Basically, I'm getting a couple of questions now about doing AIE type workloads.
Okay, shocker.
And so, yeah, shocker, exactly. And so I'm asking questions about that.
Do you need to partition individual GPUs or dynamically allocate the host GPUs to guests as they start and stop?
Dynamically allocating, well, no, partitioning is probably the better option here.
Are you able to run Kates?
Kubernetes?
Yes. There may be some partial answers for you there.
By having one big guest with all the GPUs and then running containers inside of that guest?
Or a
Probably
bunch of guests on a bunch of machines
not.
running.
There are mechanisms to share resources among the containers. May not be what you're looking for, though.
Depends on how tight of an isolation you need between workloads.
As I said, I don't know if it solves his.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm getting vague questions from people, and so my ability to answer these kind of questions from you guys is very limited.
Dear listeners of the world, please help us out on this topic because we are at the limits of our knowledge and we welcome your wisdom. How about that? Okay.
Sounds very good.
Thank you. Moving on. Harry, you may find this interesting. There is an open project for BMM bhyve acceleration for QEMU in FreeBSD land, possibly Lumos land. So the link is there. Maybe that can help your development.
Yeah, thank you for the link. I've just been reading through it, actually.
Oh, you have? Excellent. Before we get to your switch question, this came up between calls, I believe, which was the NV configuration syntax for bridge. So there's the link, various commentary. This developer LW has been very active on all things bridge, and we thank them for it because the bridge cannot be too featured or speedy or otherwise. Yes, Jan?
The problem is that features and throughput are enemies
Fair
when it
enough.
comes to the driver. And the feature richness and flexibility of a bridge driver is what makes it so hard to get it up to speed. Another warning is that FreeBSD 15 recently has gained a sanity enforcement code so that you can no longer add member interfaces to a bridge if the member interface already has a layer 3 address, so IPv4 or IPv6. There's now a kind of backward compatibility sysctl you can enable to let you keep your broken configuration for a while longer, probably until 16.0. There was some discussion in Current and I think Hackers on this, on the mailing list, because of course that broke people's stuff, and then, oh, that's why multicast never worked right for me.
Well, yep, we've got to flesh all that out.
Experienced developers, so it's really, yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully you're not accusing them of writing inefficient code that slows down the bridge.
No.
You said there are enemies, new features versus performance.
The way the bridge driver gained its features was before we had proper SMP support in the network stack. So all of the features which are now there make it hard to now come back and make it fast.
Cool. Fantastic. Here is a Fediverse post on a request for fast snapshots. Let's just say, Hans, looking at you, let's get the plumbing in place. I know it's a big effort, but people want it. Moving on, I know we've been joined, and oh, we lost Daniel. Anyone with bhyve topics before we briefly talk about switches with John? Looking at you, Mark. Oh, actually, everyone's been really well represented except for Alexander. I will see you in Ottawa. I want to talk about a manual page for bug reporting, but that's a pub conversation. Actually, you've all had really good coverage. Yes, Andrew.
It seems the most difficult thing about the whole fast snapshots idea is the definition of fast, because the hardest part of that is the quick suspend, storing it to the disk somewhere.
I leave that open.
What about forking the bhyve process so that you get a copy on write view of the guest memory? Similar to what Redis does when you do a periodic dump? Could you do something like that with nested page tables so that...
I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for the call.
Take care, Alexander. See ya. Yeah, good moment to run. So we will not answer this on this question, on this call, but we do want the plumbing in place. Thank you, Hans. Fascinating, and of course, define fast, define snapshot. Anyway, there's the link. John, you had a question of using, you named two brands, one of which was Mikrotik. What you got? What are you trying to achieve?
I just posted the one. I'm just curious if this is for home use. Curious if anybody has touched these things, used them, have any experience with them. It would be used between some.
I have a Mikrotik at home. Works fine.
Okay.
I have many. Jan knows them very well, knows the syntax, of course, as a Latvian American. So yeah, they're a thing, and what I love is that you can start with like the most low-end sort of travel router, and your configuration will generally work its way up to their highest performance 100 gig switch. That's a general statement, but it's not like the different categories have completely different user experiences.
No, not completely different, but if you have a hardware switching or routing engine, your configuration changes a little bit. It's not that the other configuration doesn't work, just that it doesn't get accelerated.
There's a question of acceleration, which can very much impact the price. And then, John, I would focus on me personally, anything that supports both router OS and switch OS, and it lets you simply change in the GUI. It's very cool.
Yes.
This probably has pretty potent hardware acceleration for that kind of money, because I'm running a general about $200 for a switch, and it's covering the basics quite well. And I know I can replace it with something like this when the time comes. Go ahead.
If you look at that one, you can find the hardware diagram here. I will drop the link.
Sure.
As you can see, you have your 10 gig switches, all 10 gig switches. Some of them are exclusive OR, so either the SFP Plus or the combo copper ports.
Yes.
And then you have your 12 port. And basically, you have then built into the device a tiny router on a stick.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see here, you have a 1 gig link to a puny CPU. It has its little 100 megabit management interface, which is basically serial access via SSH. But because they're MikroTik, they are not ripping out the routing code, so you can use all of the routing features. It's just that you only have 64 megs of RAM and a puny 650 megahertz, I think, single core CPU, which means it's there. You can use it for something like a routed WireGuard out of band or overlay network for management traffic, or heck, even MPLS, VXLAN in IPsec transport mode or whatever. All of that functionality is left in. It's just that you don't have much horsepower to use it. So fine for management traffic, fine for logging, reporting stuff, or for doing some kind of DNS updating and stuff like that. But you can't route in software for any meaningful throughput. If you look at the performance numbers,
I am looking at a line of 10 gig. My firewalling and stuff like that is done on dedicated VM bhyve devices, and I'm not looking for this to be a router at all at this point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hope that helps. You've come to the right place.
In that case, it's a fine device for the price.
I appreciate it, folks.
Cool. Anything else before we call it good? We've covered a lot of ground. Great work, Hazam. Thanks for dropping in, John. You're about, what, once a month? I love it. Love it.
I'm busy. Sorry.
Notice I like
and John,
notice.
if you want it for a home lab, unless you have a dedicated room, you probably want to order 4 Noctua 40mm fans.
Yeah, I saw that in one of the reviews. I thought about doing that, but I don't have a dedicated room, but I have a basement. So
yeah,
close enough usually.
Close enough. But just wanted to say the fans are compatible with the deep 40mm Noctuas, and if you buy the right version, they have this useful little clips which you can use to just hook in if you can't directly plug them in. So if they just ran the wires directly to the board, you cut the wires, and the 40mm Noctuas, if you buy the right version, ship with a little one-time kind of Vago clip-like device to just snap it together, and then it's almost idiot-proof.
Yeah, not afraid of soldering either.
Cool.
Yeah, but crimping is more reliable because you don't get the mechanical brittle connection, and you don't have to worry about isolation because it's self-cutting.
Okay, save it for the hardware engineering call, along with the embedded call and the networking call. So everyone, thank you so much. I hope to see some of you at BSDCan. Andrew, would you like the honors?
Like and subscribe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.